Hey guys, welcome to Sovereign Radio at Modular Summit. It's bright and early. It's the start of the 3-day conference. I think it's 3 days. I'm Harlamber. I'm doing some podcast interviews as part of Sovereign Radio. I'm the co-founder of Across Protocol and apparently a part-time podcast host. I'm here with Erick, one of the co-founders of Cartesi, to tell us about what he's up to and go deep on all things modular. Erick, welcome.
Thank you, Hart. Thank you so much for having this conversation today. Very nice to be here. And my name is Erick. I'm a co-founder of Cartesi. We have been doing this for quite a while, since 2018. We're going to delve a little bit into this. And let's go for it.
Yeah, let's go. So you and I have both been building in the space since about 2018, which makes us older gentlemen in the space.
Right.
But I thought maybe it'd be interesting, we do a little tiny bit of the origin story of Cartesi, keep it short, and then get into what it is, and then get into all things modular, and make sure we spend lots of time talking about what you guys are about to launch, since you are live on mainnet, and the first Cartesi apps are coming out very soon. So yeah, how did it start? How'd you get into this?
Cool, yeah, so as we're talking about this before. I was a digital nomad back in 2012, 2014. I was traveling in Thailand. And, it was cool for a while, but then it started to get exhausting and kind of shallow, that I felt that I was not building anything meaningful. And I, back then, started to get very interested about blockchain tech, more toward 2016. And it happened that while I was trying to figure out a tech business to start, a great friend of mine called me from the academic world. And he said, I'm prototyping something in blockchain. Would you like to co-found this with us? Because we need some business people to leverage this idea. And then, yes, let's go for it. So we got a team together, and that became later Cartesi. Right, so at the beginning, the guys had this idea of creating a decentralized AI marketplace back then. And in order to create such a marketplace, it was necessary to specify a virtual machine that could actually run a generic computation. So they're trying something that could boot Linux, which was quite ambitious. And I found that quite cool, but I didn't really buy into the idea of the AI marketplace back then, but felt that you were tapping into something that was actually more generic and more useful for the industry than that. And that's when Cartesi became a layer 2 solution for scalability.
So let's talk on that for a second. So this Cartesi VM, maybe it'd be worth, and then we can get into the capabilities of what Cartesi offers. But what's the difference between your VM and the Ethereum VM or the Solana VM? Mm-hmm. What's it enable that can't be done otherwise?
Okay. Well, in terms of implementation, the Cartesi VM is an emulation of the RISC-V instruction set. So actually, it emulates the entire instruction set of the RISC-V architecture, which is an open standard architecture, right, used by Qualcomm, Google, and it can actually boot an operating system, right? This VM has all the properties that a blockchain VM should have. It's deterministic, reproducible. It can generate proofs, fraud proofs. And we started from there. We wanted to create a machine in which people would be able to develop for Web3, pretty much like they do for Web2, using the software stacks that are already available on mainstream.
Yeah, so I think this is a concept that maybe seems very simple, but is really quite ambitious. So let's push on it, right? But basically, you're saying, okay, the EVM and the SVM that everybody knows in the blockchain space, they can run code, but they can't run Linux. And so you effectively have figured out a way to create a way to boot Linux onto a blockchain VM. Is that roughly right?
That's right.
And so what does that give you? If you can do that, outside of the fact that it sounds like as a developer, I could have a better developer experience, maybe what are all the benefits I get?
Well, I think from the beginning, we have this dream in Web3 to create a decentralized web that you don't want only to have DeFi applications and NFT applications. You want to broaden the spectrum of what's possible. And for us, since the beginning, it was quite clear that in order for us to get that point, not only we had to tackle the scalability issue. Nowadays, we also talk about UX. It's quite important. But we also thought that this expressivity was missing. If you just think about what you can do with Solidity in the EVM, we want to give people all this flexibility to build like real centralized applications in different domains, different use cases that would bring people much closer to what they can do in Web 2, right? So the idea is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel as a software engineer. I know people who develop, they are very used to the concept of abstraction. Nobody wants to reinvent the wheel, right? So to give you some examples of things that we can do.
Yeah.
So last year, one of our engineers managed to make Doom verifiable on chain. So basically, you can have a gameplay. You can, let's say, store the gameplay of Doom and submit it compact it to the blockchain or some DA layer. And then from there, Cartesi rollups can read that as inputs and verify the gameplay in a deterministic way. And the rights, if there's someone cheating, since it's optimistic rollups, as long as you have one node that tells the truth, it can enforce the right result of the gameplay on chain. So it was, it's a good example because who would think that it would be possible to run Doom on the blockchain?
So that is interesting. Okay, so I can prove my gameplay of Doom on a blockchain. Where do you think this goes? Like, what do you think if you can do stuff like that, what does it enable? What kind of, what's the new frontier that this would enable?
That's a great question. Actually, we have a thesis that we call the cone of innovation. For Web3, let's say we look at Web3 as a computational platform, we need to get to a point where data is very cheap, computation is very cheap, latencies are very low, right? So as we expand on data capacity and computational capacity, new use cases become possible that were not before, right? Maybe you can deal with high-frequency trading. You can do smart cities applications. Lots of things that today we can't do. For instance, another example of the things that are coming up now on Cartesi is a system called Bug Buster. It is a decentralized bug bounty platform because since you're able to run Linux on the Cartesi machine, you are able to, people can deploy any kind of program that they can compile for Linux, and they can create a bug bounty for these programs. Advantages, for instance, if you use platforms like Immunify today for bug bounty, there is also the intermediary coming into play, right? If a developer hacker finds a bug, they then submit a claim, and then there is a human being that is going to have to intermediate, and the company will have to, the software creator will have to also agree to pay a certain amount, and there is some subjectivity involved. In this system, people are able to create bug bounties without any human intermediation, fully decentralized on-chain.
Very cool. Okay, so Cartesi is live on mainnet as of very recently, right? Last couple months or even less?
Yeah. No, actually it went live last year, end of last year.
Okay. But the first apps are coming out very soon.
Yes.
Before we get into the apps, I also think it's quite interesting to think about the components, the other kind of technologies that I think my intuition is were kind of necessary before you guys could really go live on this. To me, it seems like you need cheap data availability in order to make this be feasible. And you've also needed, you publish either to an optimistic rollup stack like Arbitrum or Optimism, or do the sovereign rollup thing or strategy. Is that about right?
That's a good point. We are an execution layer. So Cartesi has an optimistic roll-up solution, meaning that if you want to deploy a DApp, your DApp has its own roll-up. It's an app-specific roll-up.
Yep.
So by doing that, you can really scale computation a lot because now your DApp is not competing for block space, at least in terms of computation with other applications. You have your own roll-up.
Yep.
Thus, you have your own CPU. Now, of course, if you have a lot of computation, but you don't have much data available to you, or data is very expensive, the possibilities of applications you can develop is reduced.
Yep.
So as you also improve the data situation, then you can have more use cases.
So, okay, so yeah, because it kind of seems to me like you guys are almost the poster child for the modular ecosystem. It's like doing your own execution environment, require your separate data availability, require settlement to a different optimistic system. And it feels like from a very modular ecosystem type perspective, we needed all these pieces to exist before you could really deliver on what your promise is. Which then I think is pretty cool because it does seem like we finally have the technology here to have this level of scalability for an idea that 2 years ago, and it's been a lot more than that, but even 2 years ago, I think most people wouldn't have believed this was possible.
That's correct. And actually, one of the challenges that at the beginning because the concept of modularity was premature or didn't even exist the way we understand today, we are kind of trying to implement other pieces that were not our domain, right? Like a DA layer before. And at some point, we decided to really focus on the Cartesi machine, the VM, and be an execution layer and put all of our resources and intelligence on that piece. And now everything starts to really make sense, and looks like we were a bit ahead of time, but now things are coming together very nicely, especially when you think about partnerships, like when we are doing close work with Espresso, lots of experimentation with Celestia, Eigenlayer as well. So you can run Cartesi as Cartesi rollups on Ethereum directly as a layer 2 or as a layer 3, on Arbitrum or other layer 2 solutions.
Yep.
Now we're exploring also a possibility of running Cartesi as a co-processor on Eigenlayer. So
interesting.
Yeah.
How would that work in concept?
Yeah, the idea is that if you think about Cartesi rollups, you are thinking about a stateful system, right? You are advancing the state, just like you do with any application running on mainnets, on main chain, or on a rollup. But as a co-processor, you can have like Lambda services that you specify a computation, you outsource the computation to be run by this external system, and then it returns the results safely to a smart contract or on-chain. It's a single-step computation. Not a single step, but it's a stateless kind of computation. You provide the program, you provide the inputs, and then you get the outputs in a safe way back on-chain, right? And then you can use the AVS system and use ways to have several nodes endorsing that result together. And you can even have a slash mechanism that can be done, using fraud proofs.
Yeah, I do see the idea of having that kind of the Cartesi VM being very useful to like Eigen AVS systems. That's very interesting. Okay, so then the applications that are coming out soon, can you give us, they're not announced yet, so probably can't tell us too much, but can you give us a flavor of the types of things you think that you're most excited about?
Sure. No, there are some that they are quite public. If you go down here, the guys from Rives, they are already presenting at the Cartesi booth. So Rives is kind of a decentralized game console. It expanded from the idea of the Doom that was run on chain. They pushed that one step further. They are now creating this project that you can have this idea of a global, worldwide arcade game where people can compete for a place on the leaderboard. But they are also creating a marketplace for people to create cartridges and new games and get monetization on that as well. So all that economy and verifiable gameplay experience is being developed on Cartesi, and people can already see it downstairs, the demo. The other one I mentioned was Bug Buster, which is also being developed publicly, and the guys are looking for collaboration, making this project more communitary, more collaborative as well.
Very cool. Okay. Only because I work on a cross protocol, and how does interop work? Like, how do you transfer funds to these rollups? Is it just the same way that you would bridge in Arbitrum and Optimism kind of stacks too?
That's a challenge, but it's a challenge. We've been discussing this since the beginning, and we're trying to solve that alone ourselves. And now it became a challenge of the ecosystem, right? Because now that we're thinking about a future where you're going to have thousands, if not millions, of rollups, and they have to communicate safely between themselves. Not a problem of Cartesi, a problem of the industry.
Yep.
So we are working together, with, like, let's say, with Espresso Sequencer, and other protocols that are also helping to tackle this problem. But yeah, there are ways that you can actually make the transfer of funds and coins, or even send messages across rollups in a safe way. But that's an ongoing work.
Very cool. Okay, well, we got to wrap this up, but just for where people want to find out more about Cartesi, what you guys are doing, where should they look?
They can go to cartesi.io and find everything from there. You can also find me on Twitter. Erick the Moura is my handle on Twitter.
Great. Erick, thank you so much. Super cool. Congrats on the progress. And let's enjoy our Modular Summit here. Should be
For
fun.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.